Hey guys, and welcome back to Miller RC. Today we're going to be talking about the Extreme Flight MXS EXP. This is an ARF kit, so you do have to supply the electronics and have some basic building skills to get this flight ready. So, the specs we have here is that it has a wingspan of 48 inches. The length is also 48 inches. The wing area is around 500 square inches, and the weight's going to be somewhere around 44 to 48 ounces, or 2.75 to 3 pounds. The battery they recommend is a 2200 to 2700 milliamp 4-cell, and that's the specs. So what they want you to put in the airplane, since this is a ARF kit, you do have to supply the motor and servos and etc. So we'll start with the servos. The servos they recommend are from Hi-Tech and Futaba. For the Hi-Tech servos, the HS70MG, 5070MH, 65MG, and HS5065NG will work great in this airplane. Now those, the Futaba is a S3156. Now those are for the aileron and rudder. This is an EXP, and that means we're going to have a really large elevator and lots of throw on the elevator, just as you see here. So, pretty insane amounts of throw on the elevator right there. So, to make sure you don't get any blowback, Extreme Flight does recommend a little bit bigger of a servo that you put on the elevator. And they recommend the Hi-Tech HS5085 or the HS85MG. Now, one note on the 5085, I believe that servo there is discontinued from Hi-Tech. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I have learned is that they are coming out with a new micro servo, Hi-Tech is, the D85MG, and that's basically a direct replacement for the 5085, and I believe it has about the same amount of speed and torque. So those are the servo recommendations. The motor they recommend is the Torque 2814T 820 kV brushless outrunner motor, and the ESC, they recommend the Airboss Elite 45 amp ESC. And the prop they recommend is a 12x6E, and they do have a spinner measurement of 52 millimeters. Okay, so let's talk about what I have in my airplane, because I did not follow all recommendations, and I want to share what I have in my airplane. So, up front, we do have the Falcon 12x6 prop. I don't know if you can see the words, but yeah, Falcon right there. And it's been a great prop. I've been loving it. It gives the airplane very good performance. The motor I have is the recommended torque 820 kV motor, and then I have the old Airboss 45 amp ESC. The newer one, I believe, on the BEC that they have in there is at 6 volts. The old one, unfortunately, is at 5.2. So that is one thing with the older one. So to accommodate that, I do have a Castle 10 amp BEC in there that I programmed to run at 6 volts, and that gives my servos the most torque and speed. So let's go ahead and pop off the canopy here and show you guys what I'm running as battery and receiver. If I can match up, there we go. Battery wise, I have this 2800 60C LiPo. It is a little bit on the heavier side because of the high C rating and the higher milliamp hour, but I have found this to work pretty good. So here I have the AR6210 Spectrum receiver, and that is pretty much all in the front. I don't know if you can see that little blue box right down there, but there's the 10 amp BEC. But that works pretty good. Servo wise, I am running on the ailerons the Hi-Tech 65 HB servos right there, and they've been a great servo, and they work for me flawlessly. So I know this is not the one recommended, but I did check and they are pretty much exactly like the 65 MGs. So that's what I have running for ailerons. The elevator is a Futaba S3102 micro servo right there, and this also has been a pretty good servo. This is also not recommended by the manufacturer. Reason is because it is pretty slow compared to the servos that they do recommend, but it does put out the same amount of torque. So I've been using it, and it's been working fine for me. The rudder servo that I had in there is recommended by the manufacturer, and it is the Hi-Tech HS70. Yep, right there. And it's been a great servo, and it works really good. So that is what I am running in my particular airplane. You guys can vary that however you want. It's probably going to depend on what you have lying around the most, so you can, don't have to buy new stuff. But that's what I have in mind. Get her centered up here. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about some of the features. The cowling and the wheel pants are pre-molded and painted, and they match the covering perfectly. And the covering was great. I'm not sure what the covering is. I'm pretty sure it's what do you call it? Either Aura cover or the Hanger 9 stuff. I forget what it was called. Ultra Coat? Yeah, either Hanger 9 Ultra Coat or something like that. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, that's what I believe it's covered in. I don't know if you noticed, but when I showed you the tail servos, I did have these long servo arms right there, and those are included with the kit. So no matter what servos you put in this airplane, you can have the same amount of throw that the manufacturer recommends, as seen as the elevator, which has an extreme amount right there. I believe the manual says close to 85 degrees, which is, well, not 85, but 80 degrees, which is pretty insane. There's also one of those horns for the rudder, so or one of those servo horns for the rudder. So it also comes with these pretty cool looking little wing racing tips here that you can put on the end of the wing. They just bolt on, just like the side force generators. You can see the two bolts and the clear washers that hold them on. Those racing wing tips bolt on the same exact way. So the neat thing is, for whatever you want, you can have multiple wingtip combinations. So you could have the SFGs like I have here. You could have the racing wingtips, both or neither. So it's your choice, and it works out pretty good. Alright, so let's talk about the construction of the airplane. Just kind of walk you through what you basically got to do. Once again, I highly recommend you have some fielding experience of, maybe a couple plug and plays, and if you've done ARS before, then you can build this no problem. But let's talk a little bit about the assembly. First note is that the control horns, there's, they all include those. The one for the elevator, I believe is, I can't remember if it was shorter or longer, but it is different between all the other control surfaces, so I did want to note that. Control surfaces are not hinged from the factory, so you do have to do your own hinging work. So it recommends gluing the control horns to the ailerons first, hinging the ailerons, installing the aileron servos, and then the linkages, which are, another thing I want to talk about, is the linkages that this thing uses, which you probably saw them already, but they do use the ball link style hinges that are onto the threaded rods, and it works really good. It's very precise control, so I did want to mention that. Anyway, back to the construction. So then you do the aileron linkages, then you bolt on the landing gear, install the wheels, the wheel pants, And then this step, I want to go into detail here. Do not hinge the elevator to the horizontal stabilizer before the stabilizer is inserted onto the fuselage, or else you will not be able to get it into the horizontal stabilizer slot. So what I mean by that is you have to put the actual elevator control surface into the the horizontal stabilizer slot, while you're centering up the elevator, like this. But you have to make sure that this control surface is already inside the horizontal stabilizer slot, okay? So if you do that, then you can build this airplane. But if you hinge it before, then you're going to have a problem. You can't, get it in there. So I wanted to go into that specific detail. Then they recommend putting in the control horn for the elevator, and then putting the control horn on the rudder, and then hinging the rudder, installing the tail wheel, installing the tail servos, and then the included servo arms, as well as bolting on the motor, doing the cowling, and then installing the ESC, and then other electronics, and that's pretty much it. And then the manual has some other neat little features. So that's pretty cool. So that's basically kind of the assembly portion of the airplane. So I thought just wanted to share that a little bit. Some other things to note are the cowling, how it's secured. It's just secured with 2 screws right there, self-tappers, and it seems to work great. I haven't lost any cowlings. Yeah, I've not lost a cowling. There is the pin latch for the canopy. The wing bolts on with 2 included nylon bolts, and there is a carbon fiber wing tube throughout the wing. The landing gear is made out of carbon fiber, not aluminum, so it's kept lightweight, so that's cool. And then obviously the SFGs are included, and that's another thing, so that's some other things to note. Clear canopy is pretty cool. You do not have to install that from the, you don't have to glue it on or anything, so that's neat. They did it already for you for the factory, so that's cool. Some tips that I have for you guys, especially if this is your first 3D model, or if you're trying to get a little bit more performance out of those foam plug and plays, maybe some like the E-Flight airplanes. So here's I got a couple tips for you guys. So when I first bought this airplane, I installed this motor right here. I had this motor in it. This is the Turnigy SK3. If it'll focus here, maybe I have to get my hand at a different angle. It's not focusing. There we go. You can see the numbers. 35, 42, 800 kV motor. This is what I had in there first, because the torque motor and the ESC combination is pretty expensive if you're going to buy it as a combo, and from the Extreme Flight website. So I did buy that motor, and it was about $30 less than the torque motor. However, the torque motor is more quiet and more efficient. I've gained about maybe 2 minutes of flight time with the torque motor compared to the Turnigy motor. So if you're one of those people who like to save money, you could go that route for the Turnigy motor. So that's one tip I have for you guys. Another tip is, please make sure when you buy this airplane that you're running your servos at 6 volts or the maximum voltage. Because in an airplane like this, you definitely want the most torque and the most speed, and that will all increase if you're on. The servos will have the highest power and speed if you're at the highest voltage they can go. So I definitely recommend the highest voltage your servos can go. And then on the topic of servos, please do not skimp on your servos. When I first bought this airplane, I put in Tower Pro 9-gram Metal Gear servos, and they were just they were terrible. I was always fighting the ailerons. They would not center, as well as the rudder. I always had the original elevator servo. I always had that one. But I was always constantly fighting the ailerons and the rudder because they wouldn't center, and I don't think they had enough torque either. So I highly, highly recommend you guys buying the servos, the recommended servos, so you have a much better flight experience. One thing I forgot to mention, is I'll take you guys off the camera stand here for a little bit, is this does come in 2 colors. I have the box right here. It comes in that red, white, and blue. And there's the old one, obviously, the one that I have, but it also comes in that. So if you are a fan of that, you can get that color scheme instead. So it's your choice. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about pros and cons. You know, what I liked and what I did not like about it. The pros are going to be the servo arms that are included is an absolutely, it's smart thinking. More manufacturers should do this for sure, because it's great that you could put in whatever elevator servo you want and have the massive throws on the rudder and elevator. Both servo arms are included in the kit for the rudder and elevator, so that's cool. The quality construction in this airplane is just excellent. When I first unboxed this airplane, I was honestly thinking this airframe might not last long because it was so light compared to the other airplane I had. But I've had 50 to 70 flights on this, and it's still around. And if you watch my flight review, I can throw it around in some pretty extreme maneuvers, and it's stayed together. So the quality construction is amazing. The manual is excellent. It's very well written, and it tells you so much. It tells you a little bit more than some of those other manuals that I've used to have for the ARFs. The manual is very excellent. I want to make that a pro. And then here's the biggest pro, in my opinion. The performance that you get out of this airplane is absolutely amazing. I had a E-Flight Carbon Z Yak 54, a really old one, and that was a good airplane. I had a lot of fun with it, but that airplane with the recommended battery weighs 4 3/4 pounds, I think. I know it's over 4 pounds. You guys can give me the exact. You guys can leave in the comments the exact weight if you want to. But it was pretty heavy. This one, I am just a little over 3 pounds. It is a lot lighter, and I can tell you, the flight performance, it out 3Ds the Yak 54 by E-Flight in pretty much every 3D maneuver. Hover, torque roll, Harrier, rolling Harriers, whatever you want it to do. And especially with the large elevator and the large elevator and rudder throws, it definitely spins and tumbles a lot better than the Yak 54. So the flight performance, if you buy the recommended servos and a lot of the recommended stuff, is just amazing. So that is all my pros. The cons, the spinner that you see on the airplane now is actually not included in the kit. I think it should be. If you guys want a measurement, it's 52 millimeters. However, when you buy the kit from Extreme Flight, they do have a combo package to where you can buy a spinner. But to be honest with you, I think it should be included in the kit. I wouldn't mind paying extra $10 for the kit, just for including the spinner in the kit. But that's my preference, and that's why I think the spinner should be included in the kit. So another con is the ball links on the linkages. I showed you the linkages. The problem I had with those is they screwed on to the rods really tight. So tight that one of the brass ball rotating ball joints, I guess you want to call it, actually dislocated and came out of the plastic housing that screwed onto the control rod. So I was, and every one of them was really tight. So it kind of made it hard to center the control surface and servos, and kind of made the build a little longer. But I was able to get through it. And I don't know if you're gonna buy this thing, if yours is gonna do the same. But my ball link screwed on pretty tight. And one thing, I know this is just a little nitpicky thing here. It's not super important. I know they're trying to save weight and everything, and make it the best performer it can be. So I'm not going to say this is a huge negative. But where the canopy sits on this balsa wood right here is pretty thin. And right here, if you can see it, I have multiple cracks right there because when I'm plugging out the battery, my hand tends to slip and hit that wood and kind of crack it. So I kind of wish maybe it was made out of a little bit more durable material. But I know they're trying to save a lot of weight, so I ain't going to say it's a huge negative. But as far as that is all the negatives I've found with this airplane. I will have a flight review on this of me flying it. I do a couple 3D maneuvers, just basic ones, so I'm definitely not the best 3D pilot, 3D'er in the world, but I do some basic 3D maneuvers and show you what it can do. So be sure to check that out. And I definitely recommend this airplane. It's the way it performs and the way it flies. I've been having a ton of fun with it. It is definitely one of the best aerobatic airplanes I've ever flown in my career yet to date. So, yep, I definitely recommend it for the money. And this has been Miller RC, and tune in next time.